Thank you for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. I would like to try something a little bit different here today at the No Days Off podcast. No Days Off Nation, I need you to plug in because I'm not just going to talk at you as I typically do with most of our episodes. I'm going to walk you through an exercise. And I need you to actually do it, not just listen to it, so that you get as much out of the next 8, 9, 10 minutes as possible. If you're driving, pull over, grab a pen if you've got one, or open up the Notes app on your phone. I don't care what you do, but I want you to do the exercise. It comes from Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Hardy. Obviously, guys I've talked about quite a bit, huge fan of, and I've talked in the past about the book they wrote together called The Gap and the Gain. And I want to talk about how it changed how I personally think about progress and how I think it'll change for you too as we work through this exercise, okay? Here's the idea. If you're unfamiliar with the gap and the gain, most of us, and I'm including myself in this, we measure ourselves against where we want to be. We measure ourselves against where we want to be. So we create this gap. You set a goal at the beginning of the year, let's say, you're half of the way or 3/4 of the way there. So instead of feeling good about that, you actually feel behind because there's still a big gap between where you presently sit and where you want to go. Or worse, you actually hit the goal, and before you even take a breath to acknowledge it, you move the target. I'm sure some of us here are guilty of that. Maybe you create a new number or a new benchmark, and that creates what? It creates a new gap. And you do this over and over and over again. And eventually you're someone who has built something that's pretty darn impressive, but it feels like you're always falling short. I'm going to guess that sounds familiar to a lot of you listening right now. That's the gap. And a lot of us, arguably most of us, high achieving entrepreneurs, we live there permanently. Now, the gain, that's the gap, remember, the gain is the opposite. The gain is when you measure yourself not against some future ideal, but against where you actually were before. Where were you 12 months ago? What did your business look like? What did your calendar look like? What did your confidence maybe look like? If you're honest about it, the distance between that version of you and this version of you is probably enormous. But you never stop to see it because you're too busy staring at the next target. So here's the exercise. And I really, really, really want you to do this right now. I want you to think about one area of your business or your life that you've been feeling frustrated about. Just pick one area of your business or your life that you've been feeling a little bit frustrated about. The thing where you feel like you should be further along than you actually are. Where you keep kind of beating yourself up for not being where you want to be. Okay, you got that situation or scenario in mind? Now I want to ask you 3 questions about that one area, and I want you to answer them. Okay? First question. Where was I, or where were you 12 months ago? Where were you 12 months ago? Not where you think you were. Where you actually were. What were your real numbers? What was the real situation? Get real specific with this, all right? Answer this first question. Where were you 12 months ago with respect to the area that you're analyzing? Now, second question. Where are you right now? Where are you right now? Now, again, be very specific. Not where you wish you were. Where are you literally at right now? And then the third question, what did I do to close that distance? What did I do, or what did you do to close that distance between where you were and where you're at today? What decisions did you make? What hard conversations maybe did you have? What did you stop doing that wasn't working? What did you double down on that was working? What did you start doing maybe that was uncomfortable? When you line those 3 answers up next to one another, you're actually looking at the gain. And for 95% of people, that gain is probably pretty darn significant. But the problem is you've been so locked in on the gap, the distance between where you are and where you want to be, that you completely skipped over how much distance you've actually traveled. Now, to be clear, I am not saying to stop setting goals. That is not the point here. Goals are what give you energy. They're the fuel for a lot of your planning and all that you do. You need them, all right? But if the only thing you ever do is measure the distance left, that gap, then you're going to burn out. You're going to lose motivation. You're going to start thinking something's maybe wrong with you. When the truth is you've been making real progress the entire time. You just haven't turned around to take a look at it. The gain is what keeps you in the game long enough for the goals to actually happen. You know, the best analogy that I've ever heard around this, and I've taught it in a lot of different rooms over the years, is if I was standing with you on top of a hill and we were looking, directly west, let's say, and I said, hey, let's go hike out to the horizon over there. And we're looking and we see the sun and the next mountaintop quite a distance away. And I say, let's go hike to the horizon. And we take off and we're hiking and we're hiking and we're hiking and we're 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours in. And we get to the next hilltop and we're nowhere closer to that actual horizon. There is still a massive gap between where we're standing at that moment and the horizon. And we're disappointed. However, if I turn you around and say, wow, look how far we've just progressed over the past 7 or 8 or 9 hours, what we're going to see is probably a massive gain, probably 30 plus miles of hiking, if not more. The challenge for so many of us is we rarely turn around and at least acknowledge where we're at. I think it takes just a couple minutes to do this exercise. And when you do it, it might completely reframe how you walk into your day or your week or your next month. Because instead of starting the day or the week like you're feeling behind, you start knowing that you're already progressing, you've already moved forward. So here's what I'd like for your action item to be, aside from working through that exercise if you did not do it. Before you go to sleep tonight, write down a few gains from the past, let's say 3 gains from the past 12 months. 3 things that are measurably better right now than they were, say, a year ago. I want you to be specific. I want you to use numbers real numbers if they exist. And then I want you to, and this is important, I want you to sit with it for a second. Don't immediately jump to whatever's next. Don't move the goalpost. Just look at what you built. Be proud of what you built because you probably don't do that enough. And you've earned it. You've earned the opportunity. So take advantage of it. That's all I have for you today, the No Days Off podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.